49 states, they've already introduced 400 bills to try to suppress the vote. 18 states behind me, 18 states have already passed voter suppression measures designed to surgically remove the voter access that 56 million people used in this past election other than voting on election day. This is not Jim Crow. This is James Crow Esquire. He went to school, got a law degree and a degree in statistics, and he has come back to try to take out every progressive voice in this nation. Now in the South, we know this because they used to call it the Southern strategy. For 40 years, they stirred up a culture war designed to split black and white voters. They even had a name for it, positive polarization. Split the nation, and we will live in the divide and win. And so with that strategy, the corporations and the Southern aristocracy, they got rich. Poor white folk in Texas and across the South got low wages, along with black folk and Latino folk. And they got less union protections and less access to health care and less farm aid. But they got politicians who lied and told them they cared about their values. But when you look out here today and see the thousands, and you look at the diversity in this crowd, this is the America they are afraid of. This is the America that dispels the Southern strategy. Or maybe this is the America that will bring another Southern strategy, a strategy to lift all people from the bottom. This is what the corporate elites are afraid of. It's not new. It's only been regurgitated and vomited up and repackaged. It's only here because of the demographic shifts that are scaring people, and they know they cannot hold on to power. They had a cult leader who became president. He didn't create the lie, he charismatized it. And with corporate help, he financed it, all for the love of power and the love of money. This is why our purpose for being here is to say to this nation, now this must stop. We cannot have it on our watch. My job here today is to make sure the purpose is clear. Pass in the filibuster now. Not only has it been used to hurt black people, but it was used to block women's suffrage and block civil rights and block corporate protection for people against corporations. End it. Pass the full provision of the true John Lewis bill, the For the People's Act. When the Voting Rights Act restoration bill is finally passed, pass it and expand it to states beyond just the South. Pass $15 living wage for the 32 million. For the 32 million low-wage essential workers that saved us during this pandemic and went to work first and got infected first and got sick first and died first. It's now time for them to get first-class wages in America. Protect our immigrant brothers and sisters who were on this land before many of us. Now we must be clear. The right time to do right is right now. That's all I came to say. This is about the possibility of a more perfect union on which everybody is lifted. And from the bottom, we lift the whole nation. This is about helping make sure that our policies are rooted in our fundamental constitutional rights and our deep religious and moral values. Now is the time. This is the time. This is about doing what's right. This is about doing what's right. And all who believe in love, all who believe in justice, all who believe in truth, all who know how to stand together, all who believe in challenge, and nonviolent direct action. Let me hear you shout, the right time to do right is right now. The extremists are standing together. The same people that want to suppress the vote are the same ones suppressing wages. The same one cutting public education. The same one blocking health care. The same one fighting, dealing with the climate. The same one pushing a war economy. The same ones that are hurting the least and the left out. If they are mean enough to stand together, we ought to be smart enough to stand together. The right time to do right is right now. Now finally, Mr. President, Biden, we love your speech in Philadelphia, but you got to come to Texas. And stop just talking to those politicians who tell you what can't be done. Come talk to the people in Texas. Come talk to them in all of their richness and diversity. Then go to Arizona. You're the president. Can't no senator tell you where you can go. Then go to Manchin's district in West Virginia. And then, like Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy and FDR and Lincoln, go to the well of the Congress and make it clear we will not pass physical infrastructure until we pass protecting the infrastructure of our democracy. Mr. President, you were elected by a multi-ethnic majority. Senator Schumer, you would not be the leader without a multi-ethnic majority. Your president, you only won by 40,000 votes in 3 states. You won by 70 million in the popular vote, but only 40,000 in 3 states. Mr. President, the time to act is now. Let me tell you something you might not be used to hearing from a preacher, but ain't no need to have power if you're not going to use it for good. Power. The right time to do right is right now. And so they want, Freddie, a political insurrection. But we're here to declare a moral resurrection. The only way they can hold on to power is by passing laws that block power. There is no moderate position. We don't want to hear about a narrower bill. This is not about left versus right or moderate versus liberal versus conservative. Saving this democracy's possibility is non-negotiable. This is about right versus wrong. And the right time to do right is right now. A change must come right now. We want 15 right now. We want the 40 People's Act right now. We want our immigrant brothers and sisters protected right now. End that sorry filibuster right now. Make sure every American can vote right now. Get this dark money out of our politics right now. Pass policies that lift everybody right now. These are the common convictions that run through our deepest faith and our deepest moral traditions. The Bible says in Isaiah 10, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children their prey. It's time to start robbing and start reviving and releasing and lifting up right now. Too many people have suffered. We need change right now. And our legacy will be as the people. When the time to do right was here, we stood up. We were counted. We stood together. We came together. We fought together. We went to jail together because we knew down in our hearts the right time to do right is right now. Somebody say America, right now. Justice, right now. Right now. Truth, right now. Love, right now. The fullness of democracy right now. Equal protection under the law right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Somebody say yeah. Welcome the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris to the mic.
Good morning, Austin! Good morning, Texas! My name is Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris. I'm the co-chair with Reverend Dr. William Barber of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival. I come to you this morning concerned but hopeful. Concerned that our democracy is in peril. Concerned that we have fewer voting right protections today than we did 56 years ago because of the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. Concerned that there are close to 13 million poor and low-income Texans and 5 million Texans who make less than a living wage. Concerned that millions of immigrants do the work to keep our society running and yet are being attacked, separated from families, and denied the opportunity for dignity. I come here concerned that although we live in the richest nation in the world, and we have the resources to end poverty outright today, moratoriums on evictions are expiring. 140 million people in this nation are poor or one emergency away from economic ruin. More than half of our children go to bed hungry. But it does not have to be this way. And so we must be hopeful. Hopeful that people, all of you and people across this state are standing up. Hopeful that a diverse fusion movement of people are together, demanding democracy, saying voting rights now, voting rights, voting rights, immigrant rights, immigrant rights, 15, and the filibuster. Hopeful that such a diverse group of people are not just critiquing what's wrong, but holding up the solutions. We're demanding that we must pass all the provisions of the Affordable People Act now. We must restore the Voting Rights Act now. We must raise the minimum wage to 15 now. And I'm hopeful because every step of this march, from Georgetown to here in Austin, people were in parking lots, crying out of buildings, joining as we marched, saying, "We're with you." And folks are here in great numbers today. That's right. Give it up for the people standing up for justice. In our work, we have a saying. We say, "Forward together, not one step back." That is what is happening here in Texas. We will move forward together, not one step back.
I need the person with the sanitizer to be up here. We want a model. No, we have some. They're just not doing it. They're supposed to be up here. I'm a little fussy sometimes. All right. So my purpose was to give the purpose, Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris from the Poor People's Perspective, Poor People's Campaign, and from Texas to the nation. We've asked Brother Beto O'Rourke, who walked all the way, who's standing for what's right. Welcome the son of Texas.
Texas, Let me hear it. Let me hear it for those who came from the Rio Grande Valley, who came from Laredo, El Paso, Dallas and North Texas, the Panhandle, East Texas, a little city called Houston, and all of our friends from right here in Austin, Texas. There are people from every single part of this state who chose to be here right now to stand up and be counted at this moment of truth for our state, for our country, for democracy. And I am grateful to every single one of you and everyone who made this possible. We started the march today from the parking lot of the AFL-CIO. Our friends in labor have our back and they're leading this fight for democracy. We thank you. I want to thank the members of law enforcement who are here and especially behind me. I want to thank them for the hard job that they have to do. And I want to thank them because it was men and women just like them who on the 6th of January put their lives on the line for this country and this democracy. And far too many of them lost their lives. And I want to thank the Poor People's Campaign and the more than 40 allied organizations, all of whom contributed to the success of this march, this action, and this rally today. And last but not least, I want to thank Annie and Willie Nelson, who are going to be coming up here in a little bit and playing a great set for everybody who came out here today. You know, Texas may have produced the laws that have made this the hardest state in the nation in which to vote, a state that has closed more than 700 polling places, most of them concentrated in low-income and black and brown neighborhoods, making people wait 5, 6, 7 hours in order to vote. It may be Texas, where our voter ID law says you can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the polling place, but you cannot use your student ID from the University of Texas at Austin to prove who you are at the polling place. It may be Texas that has proposed new voter suppression legislation to make it harder on those who have a disability, to make it harder on young people, the very old, and those who just want to exercise their right to vote. But I'll tell you what, my fellow Texans, this state has produced some extraordinary leaders, some extraordinary power, and some extraordinary energy. 100 years ago, the state legislature right here behind us, in all their wisdom, passed a law called the All-White Primary Bill that denied the right to vote for any person of color in any primary of any importance in the state of Texas. And one of our fellow Texans 100 years ago, Dr. Lawrence Nixon in El Paso, Texas, who founded the first chapter of the NAACP, nonetheless, though he was a black man and the law said that black men could not vote, went to his polling place, walked up to the election judge, showed the receipt for his poll tax, and tried to vote. And that election judge said, "Dr. Nixon, you know I can't let you vote." And Dr. Nixon said, "I know you can't, but I've got to try." And try he did, year after year, election after election, 20 years into that fight in 1944 with another Texan, Lonnie Smith, they struck down that law in a victory in the Supreme Court, Smith versus Allwright. The persistence, the strength, and the courage of this movement is what it's about. So let me close with this. For those who are tempted to despair at this moment, given everything that we're up against, those Republicans who'd rather defend insurrection than support our democracy, these rigged voting laws in Georgia and Florida and a dozen other states that are going to make it harder for so many millions of our fellow Americans to vote. I ask you to think about Dr. Lawrence Nixon. I ask you to think about John Lewis. I ask you to think about every man and every woman who had the courage of their convictions and did what they needed to do at their own moment of truth in this country's history. Are we going to fight for the right to vote? Are we going to give up until we get it? No. We're going to push through. We're going to push through till we win this. I want to thank each and every single one of you for being here. I want to thank our courageous state legislators who are in Washington, D.C. right now. And I want to thank those Democratic senators like Royce West and Boris Miles who came out today. We are the courage this country needs. Let's keep it up. Let's keep it up.
It's easy to do. All right. Now, my brothers and sisters, we're getting ready to bring up impacted persons. Everybody that comes is going to take their best 1 minute and 30 seconds to say why they marched and why as an impact. And you're going to see the diversity of the impact. The worst thing we could do is make this a binary issue just about black folk versus white folk. This has got to be about the fullness of the democracy. It's got to be. The second thing, and because of the Poor People's Campaign and moral call for moral revival, I am bothered by what the extremists, descendants of Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms are doing as they have hijacked the Republican Party. Because Lincoln and Eisenhower Republicans helped pass the Voting Rights Act of '65. But this is not just a bother by the Republicans rally. Because we would have the For the People Act if it wasn't for two Democrats. And I think y'all ought to be bothered that two Democrats are what's allowing what your state house has made, what your state legislature to be legal. To see if the For the People's Act is passed, all that's illegal. And the only reason Manchin and Sinema are voting with the Republicans and refusing and hiding behind the coward filibuster, because it ain't even a real filibuster, because you don't have to stand up and defend it, is because they believe in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and their money, rather than the United States Constitution and the people. So, we got to be willing to challenge everybody, whoever is standing against our rights. And that's why we've got people coming now who are impacted. I want to invite to come at this time, and they're all going to come to the stage. And I need that clock at 1:30. Danita Jones, Elizabeth Cave, Candace Quarles, Lucy Baines Johnson, Jeff Brandon Bird, and Ben Chow. They come in the fullness of their diversity. I'm simply asking you all, when you see that clock at 1 end, to stop so that we can continue to move forward and be safe in this heat and in the midst of COVID. Come on, give your hands up, give your hands.
You to look around at each other, at your neighbors, and see just how different you are, but you're in this space. You're in this space because you have more in common than what separates you. And the powers that be tell you you should be divisive. You should be one against the other. That's because when you're separate, you are not strong. And in Texas, we are Texas strong. We will fight, we will march till the cows come home. Texas is tired. We are weary. We are tired of struggling, and we will not take any more. My father used to tell me growing up, and I never understood
I became an adult. And I want to apologize to the pastors and the ministers for what I'm about to say. But my father used to tell me, don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
Greetings, Texas. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. A people united will never be divided. It's beautiful, my fellow Texans, to see this show of unity among so many groups and coalitions coming together to mobilize and organize and move as one. It is vital for the success of every aspect of this movement that we come together unified as often as necessary for all people's rights to justice and as soon as the vote is restored. May we remember this moment as the resurrection of the civil rights movement we still so desperately need in order to restore the sanity to this nation. So we turn and we use the 1960s civil rights movement as the blueprint for this moment. Thus, my charge to you, my fellow Texans, in the form of a question: how will you move from this moment changed? How will you move from this moment motivated? How will you move from this moment willing to risk discomfort and hardship for the sake of bringing change to all our communities? And our community united, we honor the sacrifice of the freedom fighters that came before us, and we call upon their spirits that they may be with us to give us courage and wisdom and safety as we demand justice and dignity for that every person deserves. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Candace Quarles, and I'm a resident of Dallas County and a former council member of DeSoto, Texas. I've marched all week. Where are my marchers at? If you marched with us this week, our voting rights are under attack. I'm a member of Friendship West in Dallas, and I like to vote in my church sometimes. And I am tired of this people in this legislative body limiting souls to the polls on Sunday. We should have all-day voting on Sunday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We need to make it easier to access the ballot. We need to make it easier to vote. Governor Abbott, when will you stop fixating on the wrong thing and fix the power grid in our state? We need to expand Medicaid expansion in this state. To the Democrats in Washington, President Biden, Vice President Harris, your re-election will be based on how you show up for us in this moment. Your re-election will be based on how you show up for Texas in this moment. For the marginalized communities, for the women, for the low-wage working people, we need you to show up for us in 2021 like we did for you in November of 2020. To all my marchers, let's keep singing, keep shouting. Because we got people power. Because ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop.
And we welcome Lucy Baines Johnson. Please give it up.
Reverend Barber, you are one powerful man for justice. And Beto, God bless you for being with us every step of the way. But most of all, I want to tell every one of you just how much your fellow Americans meant to my father, Lyndon Johnson, in getting the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights, and the 1968 Fair Housing Act passed. Without you, the people, we generations. On January 8, 1964, my father declared a war on poverty, saying, "We shall not rest until that war is won."
That's right.
The richest nation on earth can afford to win it. We cannot afford to lose it. Many say this war has been lost, as poverty still exists. But just ask the millions of beneficiaries of Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, Civil Rights and Education Act if they think this is true. The war on poverty was not our enemy. Too many public policies have been. Too much inequity
That's right. That's
of
right.
incomes and access to jobs and education have robbed our people of a more just America. Today we are in a crisis. The vote gave Americans of all backgrounds and the opportunity to address the inequities of our country. Those seeking to limit access to the vote will strangle liberty and justice for all. The For the People Act and the John Lewis Act protect the right to vote for every American. Black, white, brown, disabled, immigrant, all of us, because it is all of us that make America great. It is time to ensure they become the law of the land. There could be no more fitting tribute for our hero, John Lewis, and no more fitting tribute for justice for all. In the 1960s, Democrats and Republicans stood up together for social justice. It was the right thing then, and it's the right thing now. Now, more than ever before, we need to come and reason together, all of us, to build a more just America. Texas Democratic legislators have risked everything to defend the right to vote for all of us. Justice needs brave legislators on both sides of the aisle. I cannot speak for my father now, as I can assure you I dare not in his lifetime. But I know for sure that he would want me to be with you in the fight for social justice and voting rights. In 1965, when Lyndon Johnson pled for voting rights reform, he invoked the mighty anthem of the civil rights movement. These words still beat in my heart. We shall overcome. We must. Thank you.
Yes. Say August the 6th. Come on, August. I need them to tighten up this. August the 6th, 2001. The 56th anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. All that we're asking for can be done by then. You need to do it by then. If we go past August, we are going to intensify and embolden our agitation, not just at Texas state capitals, but at state capitals all over this country. We will not shrink in this fight. There's no moderate position. There's only the mandate to establish justice and do what is right. We want to ask now that Marcel, all the folk that marched, we only could have 125 because of COVID. So all of you that marched, raise your hand. And if you see somebody that was marching, they were marching from you, tell them thank you. We want to come up at this time, Marcel McClinton, Gio Brandenburg, and Ben Chow. Come on up together as they come to speak to us.
My body is tired. My voice is shaky, but my mind is determined. Look out into this crowd. This is the Texas that I know and love. What is clear to me is the passion of everyone here, especially the children who marched with us from Georgetown to Austin, because this country has given them no other choice. When I say, Mr. President, you say we need you now. Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President! I demand that Congress pass all provisions of the For the People Act now! Do not cheapen my value. Do not lessen my dignity, for my name is Marcel McClinton and I am 5/5 of a human being. We cannot negotiate with Republicans who pass a bill in support of the Ku Klux Klan. It is impossible. My professors may be upset with me for missing class this week, but I stand here with pride because I know my God is by my side. President Biden, we need you. Earlier this week, I was harassed by a white man who was threatened by me, and I will not be silent ever again!
The march from Selma to Montgomery occurred a few months before I was born. And with every 1960s documentary that I've watched, I was like, if I was alive, if I was old enough, I would have been there. Unfortunately, over 5 decades later, I have to be here. So I drove down from Dallas, and I marched on the first day. And on the second day, Reverend Jesse Jackson joined us. He renewed our resilience. His presence alone inspired us to keep going on a very difficult day. I never could have imagined I would be marching next to him yesterday. But he shouldn't have to be here. None of us should have to be here fighting this fight. And as impactful as the last few days have been, that moment with him I will hold forever. And now I hope he doesn't mind, but I'm going to steal a little something he said yesterday. Voting rights are essential for any other rights to be attained or maintained. There is a reason they want to suppress our vote, but times, they are a-changing. That's why I'm here, that's why you're here. And if you showed up to the rally today, if you're watching online, know that you were with us on every step of that walk. Now is the time for our president to stand up and for our Senate to pass the For the People Act, or we will keep marching. Let me close with this. Show me what democracy looks like.
My name is Benjamin Chow, and I work for the Harris County Elections Department. Last year, I helped to create drive-through voting in Houston, Texas. This was the first time in the state of Texas it was used, and it was so successful that nearly 130,000 Houstonians used it. That's 1 out of every 10 Houston voters. For some people, we were too damn successful. They tried to invalidate all 130,000 votes, but we fought them in the courts and we won. Now they're trying again, this time to make drive-through voting illegal. That's why I'm here with all of you today to demand our legislature and our governor stop trying to bring us back to Jim Crow and fix the things that are actually broken, like our electric grid. I'm standing here today because drive-through voting is more than just a new way to vote. It was the reason why thousands of Houstonians felt safe enough to vote last year. The people who used drive-through voting the most were mothers of young children. They didn't want to expose their children to the coronavirus, but they still wanted their children to see how important it was to vote. So my message to Governor Abbott is this: if you want to ban drive-through voting, you should know this: a whole lot of those moms are Republicans too. So stop messing with our right to vote and save drive-through voting. Thank you so much.
Let's give a big hand for all of these who represent all of the impacted. As they leave the stage, I'm going to bring up some of our moral and religious leaders, another group of impacted persons who are coming at this time. Let them come. I'm sitting here looking out at you all and say, you know, it's a crying shame when folk won't fix the power grid, but then they try to take your power. And while they're coming, those that are spoken can lead, others can come. I couldn't help but think about a scripture in the Bible: the stone that the builders rejected have become the chief cornerstone. There are 12.7 million poor and low-wealth people in Texas. 2016, the presidential election was decided by 800,000 votes. 2.7 million poor and low-wealth folk were suppressed and didn't vote. There are 5 million people who make less than a living wage. I did a little research on all the rejected folk. I found out if the rejected come together, we can lead a revival in this nation. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those that have been rejected because of their race. Those that have been rejected because they're native Indians. Those that have been rejected because they were here first as Mexican, and then we put them out and they got the nerve to turn around and say that they're undocumented in their own homeland. I'm talking about those that are rejected because of their sickness. Those that are rejected because of their poverty. Those that are rejected because of their low wage. Those that are rejected because of their sexuality. They tell me if the rejected get together, there are more of the rejected than those that do the rejecting. And if all the rejected get together, we can end the filibuster. We can pass every provision of the 40 People's Act. We can fully restore the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We can raise the minimum wage. We can permanently protect our immigrant brothers and sisters. Turn to your neighbor, COVID safe, and say, neighbor, it's time for the rejected to lead a revival of justice in America. Let me hear you scream. Fidel Guzman, Nikki Boyle, Kathy Robles Cranston, Charlie Bonner, Amatula Contractor, and then family coming together, Christine and Adam, and their daughter, and then Charlie. Some of you say, wow, all these folks, they're not the politicians, right? At our movements, the impacted people speak first, not people who speak for them, but people who are directly impacted. And if you don't have time to listen to the impacted, you ought not be a preacher or a politician.
días, mi nombre es Fidel Guzmán. Soy miembro líder de Defensa Laboral y trabajador de la construcción. Estoy aquí con Emily Tim, directora de Proyecto de Defensa Laboral. Defensa Laboral es una organización estatal dedicada a generar poder político para familias trabajadoras en Texas. Estamos orgullosos de ser parte en el movimiento laboral de hoy. Damos las gracias infinitas a Texas AFL-CIO por su solidaridad en esta acción.
My name is Fidel Guzman. I am a member of Workers' Defense and a construction worker. Workers' Defense is a statewide organization dedicated to building political power for working families in Texas. We're proud to be part of the Texas labor movement. Let's give a special thanks to the Texas AFL-CIO for supporting this event today.
Estamos orgullosos de unirnos a esta marcha de la democracia con la campaña de los pobres a exigir que el Congreso actúe ahora para detener los ataques a la democracia y pase una reforma migratoria integral para los 11 millones de indocumentados en este país.
Something we don't do. You know, I'm tired also of when we speak in English, nobody translates us. Let him speak in his own language and we'll get it and we'll listen at it again. We don't need to do a translation. I want to hear him fully in his own language and it's being translated online. Come on, brother, speak in your language with all the power you got.
Lo que está pasando en nuestro estado está más claro. Las leyes de los republicanos están tratando de pasar en Texas el camino de mi comunidad hacia la libertad, hacia la reforma migratoria, con un camino hacia la ciudadanía y hacia salarios dignos. Depende de que todos los votantes elegibles tengan acceso a la boleta. Yo he tocado en miles de puertas para sacar el voto, aunque yo no pueda votar. Por eso estoy aquí el día de hoy para proteger el derecho de votar, porque sé que votar es el camino al poder. El derecho de votar es más grande que la política partidista. Es la diferencia entre lo correcto y lo equivocado. Nuestras organizaciones y comunidades trabajaron sin parar en las últimas elecciones para ganar mayoría en el Senado. Ahora es el momento de que el Congreso actúe, use el poder que les dimos para cumplir con nuestras comunidades. Seguiremos unidos para parar estos ataques. ¿Están conmigo? Gracias. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Y si nos echan, nos regresamos.
Yeah, give it up. Give it up. That's right. Bring our next speaker up. Bring our next speaker up. Somebody say, we all Pentecostal today, we speak in tongues. Stand in your own power, in your own voice. Here, my dear sister. She's got one. Go ahead. Give it up for her.
My name is Nikki Boyd. I'm with ADAPT and Rev It Up. ADAPT, let me give y'all some education. So the disability, it is Disability Pride Month. Last day of it. But did we get the recognition? Nah, but I'm telling you, because if you are not knowledge, now you are.
That's right.
31 years ago, this month, also the Americans with Disability Act was signed. Now let me give you a fact reality check. Disability does not discriminate. Disability does not care if you are Republican, Democrat, Independent. You can leave here and get in a wreck. Nowadays, more people are acquiring their disabilities, not born with it. But let me tell you, you will lose your rights as soon as you become disabled. You only are right to an institutional life. I have done nothing but fight. So I am ready to keep fighting. Are you ready? The person who gets paid $8.50 to get me out of bed so that I can be here to be a productive part of this society. I will continue. You will hear me. You will hear me. They hear us. Make them hear you.
That's right. Give it up for our sister.
Free our people, because someday it will be you, and you know it because you're here. And if you're here, that's because of reason. You know how quickly it can be taken away. We're here because it's going to be taken away. So you better be hot and stay hot.
I like that. Say, be hot and stay hot. They asked us, was this a peaceful rally? And I couldn't answer. I said it's a non-violent movement. But we can't be at peace because there's too much trouble going on in the world. And to the nation, we've got to have justice. And for one thing, my sister just mentioned to us about all of us having disabilities and could have it. And that's why it's so wrong. And let me tell you, I was told and asked by some of the politicians who are Democrats, if we had this gathering, don't add living wage to it and don't talk about immigrants, just talk about voting rights. And they said, I'm telling you what they said now. They said, because we can't do it all. And you don't want to, you want to have one issue. I said, all y'all can understand is one issue. Now I said, this is what we said. We said, now why is it when the billionaires ask, they get trillions of dollars, but when poor and low wealth people and moral leaders and other folk ask, we got to have one issue. To heaven with one issue. We want all our justice and we want it now.
Approximately 275,000 community attendants, direct support professional caregivers that work for our Texas seniors, children, and adults with disabilities on Medicaid. We advocate and fight for their benefits and increase wages for this workforce so our seniors and people with disabilities can live independently in our community. And I'm sure some of you out there are using attendant services now. So we are here to say, let our people vote, right? Right? We're here for that. The same Texas legislature that is oppressing people with disabilities and other voters by passing Senate Bill 1 is the same legislature that gave the community attendants, guess how much? A base wage of $8.11. Can you figure? So with that base wage, it creates a shortage. It even creates it a harder hardship for people with disabilities to find the workers to come into their homes, to assist them with getting out of bed, feeding them, assisting them in going to the bathroom. We even assist them in voting. These actions are unjust and immoral. So I just need to describe who we are. The community attendants, what? We assist people with disabilities and seniors. But we also are predominantly women. Women of color, Black, Latinx, Asian, and Native Indigenous people. We have no health care, no benefits. This is a women's issue. That is why we must go to Congress and tell them to raise it. That's one of our points. Raise that federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. So we, the community attendants, and others that are struggling to survive, we can feed our families, clothe our children, pay our rent, live with dignity and respect without struggling. That's why we must demand Congress to raise it to $15 minimum wage.
Yes, my sister. And you can't get there without voting rights. The same ones that suppress the wages want to suppress the vote. Our next speaker, come on up. You watch what get ready to happen. You just don't worry about it. We got that good. We got the veterans.
It's a beautiful day to fight for the freedom to vote in Texas! Thank you all. My name is Charlie Bonner, and I'm here with Move Texas, where we are empowering a new generation of Texas voters to use their voices and fight against racist voter suppression. But I come to you today as a Texan, as a voter, and a proud member of Texas's diverse LGBTQIA community. Because we know that voter suppression isn't a partisan issue, it's an equality issue. When these politicians can pick and choose their voters, they don't think they're accountable to us. They vilify us, and for some reason, when they're picking the bigots and the conspiracy theorists over everyday people. So instead of laws that help our community, we see attacks. Voter suppression means that we see attacks on trans kids, relentless attacks on trans kids. Voter suppression means that when black and brown trans women are murdered, the governor doesn't do a damn thing about it. We deserve better. We know that for democracy to work for us, it has to work for all of us. It has to include all of us. So show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what.
Thank you.
Give it up. Now give it up for Amadullah Contractor. Our dear Muslim sister. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam, Reverend Barber. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I want to recite a quote from Maulana Ali. A friend is not a friend unless he protects his brother in 3 situations: in his difficulty, in his absence, and in his death. President Biden, my friend, our friend, we are in difficulty because our votes are being suppressed. We are absent from Congress, so we need you to stand up for us there. And we are being killed for exercising our right to vote. My black brothers and sisters are being killed for just exercising their basic right to vote. So I want to make something very clear. You told us to out-organize voter suppression. And so, Reverend Barber organized, Reverend Theo Harris organized, Beto O'Rourke organized, Reverend Jackson organized, we the people organized, not only to send a message to our oppressors, but to empower you to do your job. We cannot out-organize voter suppression when all the odds are stacked against us. And that is why we out-organized during a pandemic to elect you to do the job that you promised us you would. We marched to show you that the people support the For the People Act and that it's time to end the filibuster because the people have organized and the people stand before you and the people call on you to do everything in your power today to make sure that the For the People Act, with all its provisions, needs to be passed before August 6th. We didn't take shortcuts when we marched, and we don't deserve to be shorted in this legislation.
That's right. Give it up for our sister. Now we're going to have a family to come and speak. Christina, Adam, daughter Sienna, and Brian.
When my mom tells people that I have 2 brothers with autism, the first response she gets is, "I'm sorry." Why are you apologizing? One cannot tell you a word about his day, but just play any song for him once and he can recite each back for you perfectly. Another cannot maintain eye contact, but give him the most difficult math equation and he solves it. Defining someone by their ability to conform to social norms in an outdated and ignorant point of view. Some of us don't get to speak with our voices, but all of us deserve to speak with our votes. My stepdad wakes up each and every day, still tired from the day before. He works 40 hours a week and 20 hours of overtime. He fights to pay everything off, only to realize that the next thing is already creeping around the corner. He feels guilty if he's not at work all the time. He works for a city that wants his labor, but doesn't want him. All he wants is his opinions to count towards something he believes in. My family has lived in East Austin for generations. That might change with me. Soon, I don't know if my family will be able to afford even a small apartment in the city. We sometimes go without basic necessities: water, electricity, a functioning AC. We are not lazy. We are exhausted from the endless cycle of poverty. I take no time with my family, even just to talk about my day. Don't tell us to do better if you're not going to listen.
Give it up for this sister. Somebody say, we are exhausted because of the meanness of poverty, but we will never quit fighting to change it. Brian, talk to us.
Soy Brian. I am here to say that the government should listen to our voices, no matter our race, citizenship, or how much money we have. Solo tengo 13 años, pero quiero que me escuchen, merezco que me escuchen. My family made big sacrifices so I could be here today. My dad is in Mexico. I haven't seen him in years. He made that sacrifice. I make this sacrifice so I get to be what my parents couldn't, an American citizen. Quiero escoger quien me representa a mí y mi familia. Quiero hacer mi parte de hacer el futuro más mejor y ayudar a las personas que necesitan ayuda.
Brian, every time someone like you has to talk about still fighting for rights, it means this flag has too many wrinkles in it. We're going to unroll it, iron it out, and fight until we're one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Give it up for this family. Now, we got a veteran coming. His grandfather was on the wrong side. He's on the right side, and he's come to talk to us. Hear his story, America. Hear his story, Texas, because we coming, and we don't intend to turn back.
Hello, my name is Charles Sims, and I'm a United States Army combat veteran. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words here today. We now before us have an opportunity to cast off the shackles and the husk of inevitability that have plagued our society for so long. For those of you that don't know, my ancestry contains individuals that accomplished a few major historical events that most today would consider an obstruction to the freedom and voting rights of Black Americans. Several members of my family signed the Ordinance of Secession. However, that has never defined who I am. Love is stronger than hate. My 3 times great-grandfather was a Confederate officer, 3-term United States Senator, and he framed the Constitution of Mississippi in 1890. This Constitution laid the blueprint for the Jim Crow laws. Regardless, I stand here today in unity with the community to bring attention to the current voting rights quandary. Everyone in this country, regardless of party, should be concerned with voting rights and the accessibility to vote. Voting rights do not affect only the minorities, but every individual. Therefore, as this Selma to Montgomery style march began, I felt it important to reach out to Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign and extend my hand in peace and reconciliation. I would like to personally thank Reverend William Barber. This kind gesture to reach out, to meet me, and embrace me as brother truly means a lot. This is the foundation of how problems are solved. when two individuals from two completely different backgrounds are able to come together organically, bridging party and racial lines so we as a people may live in better tranquility. Dr. King said, all mankind is tied together, all life is interrelated, and we are in a single garment of identity. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We still have a chance to come out of this pandemic stronger and more united than when it began. I don't care if the Democrats or the Republicans win. I want the people to win. Take this opportunity in my hand. Let us move into a new place where love is the norm, not the exception. Let us ignite this spark today. Let us sit down at the table of brotherhood. Let us join minds and hearts and move towards common purpose. And finally, bring unity into the community. And doing so, help to redeem the soul of America.
Yes, sir. Give it up.
Blueprint. What will you be a drum major?
Give it up.
How will you use your time, constructively or destructively? Always remember, voting rights are civil rights. Thank you.
Did y'all hear that testimony? Due South is rising. Now we've got 30 minutes. We've got the preachers and others coming. Each one of them has 90 seconds to 2 minutes, their best. And starting it off is none other than our brother from the First Baptist West in Dallas, who when we called to say we need to do this, he said, I got to be out of town, but I'll do everything I can to make it happen and come back. Would y'all welcome the Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes.
Thank you so much, my beloved Bishop William Barber. You are so right. Jim and Jane Crow have some ugly children, and their children are named Janet and James Crow Esquire. Janet and James Crow Esquire are determined to live down to the legacy of racism and fascism in what Maya Angelou called these yet-to-be United States of America. Janet and James Crow Esquire are determined to keep us apart. Janet and James Crow Esquire are determined that those in power hold on to power by any means necessary. And James and Janet Esquire have set up headquarters right here in Texas. They set up headquarters in Texas with their mouthpiece serving as the governor of this state of Texas, and the governor of this state of Texas serving as a mouthpiece for the Confederate legacy has determined that we would have a session of suppression right here in Texas. Is that not a trip? No, ain't that a trip? Because this is Texas, where in February we are still counting the lives that were lost because of a deregulated power grid. In Texas, we find ourselves fighting against critical race theory, while at the same time you have a special session called that illustrates what critical race theory is all about, while at the same time Texas is at the bottom when it comes to educating our children in this state. Well, at the same time, we are the state where it is hardest to vote, and at the same time, we are a state that is least insured. Oh, but it's a new day in Texas, because even though Janet and James Crow Esquire are trying to run Texas, there's a spirit of Selma that has come to Texas. This spirit of Selma has come to Texas, drum majored by Bishop William Barber and the Poor People's Campaign. They brought the spirit of Selma here, because Selma lets us know that change that is transformative does not come from Washington down. It comes from Austin and Texas up. Change does not come from the top down. It comes from the bottom up. And so there's a Selma spirit right here in Texas. I feel the spirit of Amelia Boynton. I feel the spirit of John Lewis. I feel the spirit of Jimmy Lee Jackson. There's a Selma spirit right here that's saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. No wonder Common put it like this. Selma is now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. Why? Because there's a spirit of Selma here. And because Selma's spirit is here, we are saying to Washington, D.C., you pass all of the For the People Act. We are saying to Washington, D.C., bust up the filibuster. We are saying to Washington, D.C., when you write the John Lewis Voting Right Act, make sure you write it in the spirit of John Lewis, because this is the spirit of Selma. And since it's the spirit of Selma, I might as well close with John Legend, who put it like this. He said, the battle is not over, the victory is not won, and we're going to keep on fighting until victory comes, and then we'll shout, glory, glory, because there's justice in the land. Glory, because there's peace in the land. Glory, because God is on our side. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. God's truth is marching on. James Crow, you got to go. Now let my people vote. Yeah.
Can y'all say it? Say, let my people vote. Come on, let my people vote. Now we have, after the powerful prophetic words of Reverend Dr. Frederick Haynes, Reverend Sherilyn Browning, the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Georgetown, who said, if y'all want to start something, start it at my church.
It's good to be here with you. I am Sherilyn Browning. As the Reverend said, I am glad to be here with you. And in my faith tradition, we keep on struggling with some ancient stories. We keep on thinking and hearing and playing around with these stories that Jesus told us about a kingdom of God. And back then and even now, it didn't make sense, because this kingdom of God is something where all people are welcomed and valued for their human worth, not because of what they produce or what they consume or what they do, but simply because of their human worth. It didn't make sense to the first people who heard it, and sometimes we keep on struggling with it. And we recognize as people of faith, this is the work of the church, but it is not only the work of the church. Almost 2,000 years later, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail about the interconnectedness of all communities and systems. And when he was talking about that, he was describing how he envisioned the kingdom of God as a great world house. And it started to be built then, and it is continuing to be built now, when people of all stripes gather together to do this work together. We build this world house together. And as for me and my house, it is not okay that people who are working for a living wage cannot rent or buy a house in Austin, Texas. That is not okay. Is that okay in the world house? No. It is not okay for me and my house that folks have to leave their job for a day and stand in line all day at the last remaining polling place in town just in order to have their constitutional voice heard in this land. That is not okay in my house. Is that okay in the world house? It is not okay for me and my house that people who are migrating to this great land just in hopes of a better life for their family would be separated from their children. And in that case, those children might have to go face an immigration system by themselves without legal representation or even a caring adult advocate by their side. That is not okay in my house. Is that okay in the world house? No. I am honored and grateful to be here with you to do this work of house building, this great world house where all people have dignity and value. be with you, but more importantly, purpose be with you.